Welcome to the Inside Out Money Podcast.
Can't even recognize this place. Too many pieces of our past mistakes.
Hi, I'm Maggie, and I believe real change starts from the inside out. So let's work together to improve our money and our lives from the inside out. We will explore all things money and our relationship with it. Join me each week with a rotating set of co-hosts, friends, and interviews. Let's jump in.
It's time, we going round and round and round and round.
Hey, Erica.
Hi, Maggie.
How are you?
How you doing? Oh, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Always lovely to see your face.
Same.
Yeah. To everyone else whose faces we can't see, welcome to Inside Out Money. This is a personal finance podcast focused on redefining wealth from the inside out. Every week, I speak with a rotating set of co-hosts about a different financial topic to help you improve your financial mindset and tactics. And today we've got Erica, co-host Erica here, and we're going to tackle a topic that might sound kind of restrictive. And I always think restrictions like turn people off. But it's not, so stick with us. Setting limits. When you hear that phrase, you might think of deprivation, having to cut back, or just not being able to do what you want to do and have fun with your money. But what if setting limits was actually a key to a more joyful and abundant life? So we're going to explore the idea of why limits might be just like a more positive word for budgeting, and how they actually, in the end, can give you more freedom and not be something that is coming from a place of deprivation. I think the best thing to start with is just why setting limits is not a bad thing. Erica, you and I were like just having a conversation about our kids and just parenting and how there's just times where it's like tough, right?
Yeah, I mean, and we
like
were...
your sigh, right? As you're like,
Well, yeah, and also, I mean, it's tough, and I'm sure for people who are listening, they're like, how does that tie in with setting limits? But the conversation specifically was revolved around limits for our kids, and not just in spending, but like what they take on and feeling overwhelmed. And so if you tie that back to finances, you can feel overwhelmed by the lack of control around having limits around your spending, around how you utilize your money, how you manage your finances. All of these things tie in together. And I think it comes to like, where are you looking to take control or take the reins?
yeah. I really like the word control because I think, again, control also can have like good and bad connotations. But I think when you feel in control of anything in your life, money, anything, it actually can give you more freedom and make you feel better and happier. That's the spirit of what we're talking about, right? It's the same reason we want to put it's the same reason we want to set limits for our kids, right? They don't entirely know how to set limits for themselves. If they were left to their own devices, pun intended, when I say devices, right? They would be on their devices all day long. I've seen it, when you let your foot off the brake for a minute with them, like they'll just like stay on their screen all day if you let them. And so, we, at least in our family, right, we set limits on screen time because we're trying to help them develop better discipline and prioritize other things in their life like homework and chores and face-to-face human interaction and like how to speak to someone and like look them in the eyes and use full sentences and use grammar and, just not speaking from experience or anything.
Use grammar.
Yeah.
Appropriate diction.
Learn what the word diction even means, right? Like that's step one. But like we do this because we want them to be like good, well-rounded, responsible people and, evolve into good people and citizens in this world. And I just think I think like kids is a great example of where setting limits adds value, right? It's not a bad thing. Your kids might think it's a bad thing, right? But in fairness, their frontal lobe is not fully developed yet. So their judgment of it being a bad thing is not necessarily warranted. And that's part of why like limits, the idea of setting limits like gets a bad rap, right? Like it's something that's being taken away from you, but it's actually something that when done well is giving you more time and energy on the things you want to spend time on, right? So like when you set limits on your money or a budget or other examples we can talk about, then you have more money for other things you prioritize in life.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff that you and I talk about when we're on this show is like the mindset around it. And so, someone might hear the word limits and think it's like, okay, you're like running head first into a brick wall and like you're not getting the things. But if you look at it as kind of an all-encompassing thing, look at it as like a balloon or like we'll say just like a circle. And you have so much space within that circle of your limit. And if you, just look at it as like, I still have things that I can spend money on. I'm just being more cognizant and decisive around how I spend money. Your kids still have time to spend on their devices. We're
Yeah.
just not allotting the entire day for it. And maybe that's where like a scarcity mindset comes in for them, or even probably for adults. It's not just kids, but
Yeah.
it's there to help us balance things out. It's the same thing, we try to curb our intake of sugar or junk food.
Yeah.
You balance that out and like you might go for a run. So maybe you don't buy something one day, you set that limit, you set that boundary so that you know that when you do want to spend the money on something that is more meaningful or aligned with how you want to spend your money, you're within your limits.
Yeah, totally. And like, I mean, using the, health angle, like I still eat sugar and I still eat junk food, but I certainly want to limit the amount of that I eat, especially as I get older, because I like literally feel it. I feel worse when I eat that stuff. I mean, I feel really good in the moment when I eat it, but I feel worse later. And so
It's that dopamine
Yeah.
hit that we talked about with spending money.
Well, and it's got actual like crap in it that like,
Yeah.
is designed to give you that hit too. It's actually interesting. I just thought of this, but there's actually an entire growing product marketplace around things that are designed to set limits. So you think about like all the different apps out there that like track calories and stuff like that. But like I even think about screen time, right? Like there's that product called Brick that's really popular, and then there's a ton of other like versions of that coming out. Do you know what that is, Erica?
Mm-mm.
It's like this thing that you attach to your phone. I don't even know if you physically attach it, but like when you turn it, basically it lets you like, to me, I'm dumbing down the explanation of it. Where like a Brick is not a sponsor of this podcast.
Is it a brick phone lock?
Yeah. So it you can set all sorts of limits like in your iPhone settings on like, you can set it on your kids' phones, which we do, but you could also set it on your own phone. You could limit yourself to 1 hour of Instagram a day. And when you run out of that limit, you have to like put in a passcode to like get past it. So it's a trigger that sort of reminds you you've hit your limit. But those tools like Brick, and there's a bunch of different ones. I mean, there's ones where you like lock your phone in this sort of like cookie jar. There's products like Brick, but there's people now paying money to force limits upon themselves because they know limits are good, right? And so I just think it's fascinating that like in addition to already having to like, buy an expensive iPhone, pay for a cell plan, people are willing to buy Brick, which I don't even, is there a monthly fee? I kind of want to look real quick.
I can't tell.
By the way, when you type Brick pricing, like bricks come up, versus it's getbrick.app is the company I'm talking about. Their website is getbrick.app.
So you can get this little tool.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez. That's $59.
It looks like a little brick. It's not, what? It's $9?
Brick, time brick.
How much is it?
$59.
Oh, $59. Okay. I was like, $9.
And then it looks
What a
like,
deal.
do you have to buy the app too? Anyway, you're right that it's crazy that people are willing to spend the money on something to then spend more money on something to limit them from spending time on the thing that they just spent a lot of money on.
Yeah. It's like a fascinating,
We're in the wrong business.
Yeah, and so actually, for what it's worth, I do love that Brick is like, all you have to do is pay that $60. It requires there's no ongoing subscription fees, which is nice. And so, and it allows you to do some better customization and like instantly kind of lock your phone. And I think it's like the idea of you're making your phone a brick and it won't do all the other, it'll do basic things like, receive a phone call. But you can set that. You can say, I don't want anything. I want my phone to like literally now just do nothing for the next hour so I can focus. But yeah, it's crazy that we are adding a level of consumerism to helping us set limits because I was going to say it's because we're so bad at setting limits, but actually there's just so many temptations out there, I would argue. And so in this modern world, we have to set limits to meet many of our goals and like be a productive person.
I have a business idea for us.
Okay.
We should, so that people can set limits with their spending, we should start a company where it's like an escape room for your credit cards and you have to
go through like a whole challenge.
Like you want this credit card to buy this, like you're going to do calculus and what all the other things that are involved in getting out of an escape room. It's like CrossFit meets the floor is lava meets
throw
the
in some
SATs.
AP chemistry. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'll just quit. I'll
Nobody
be like,
steal
I'm
our
out.
idea.
Yeah, don't steal
Yeah,
that
same.
idea.
Yeah.
I actually had a really good business idea yesterday for something related to like a business. I couldn't tell you what it is. It was great. And I literally was like, as I was going to bed, and I was like, I should write this down because this could be big. Didn't write it
Not as big
down.
as this great escape room credit cards.
Yeah, let's work on some names for that, Erica. You just keep
Yeah.
spitballing and get back to me, okay?
Yeah. I need my inside out money rubber duck so I can really like.
Hey, I'm working on it, just so you know. The
Okay.
only thing holding me up is that I'm looking for tie-dye ducks, which
Oh, yeah.
seems to be a gap in the market. If anyone's listening in the promotional space, there are tie-dye ducks out there. They are not stocked by the companies that will do custom printing on tie-dye ducks. You
Oh,
keep
that's
looking,
a
Erica.
rub.
I have scoured the
That's
internet.
a rub.
That is a rub. Okay, back to Erica. You're always getting me off track, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You got to set limits with me.
I'm just joking. Normally, I'm the one that gets everyone off track.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So here's the deal. Many people view limits on our spending as like a negative thing. But again, we believe the idea of spending limits is a tool. And if used correctly, it can be incredibly powerful. It helps you to set up a framework that allows you to direct your money towards what you truly value and what is more intentional to you. So let's just talk for a minute about some of the benefits of setting healthy limits. I think they're fairly obvious, but I think it just helps to like get ourselves motivated to put some more limits in place on our spending and on things related to money when we root it in how this is going to help us.
Okay, so one example of that is that it reduces decision fatigue, which is, I mean, we already talked about how overwhelmed everybody is. So
Yeah.
the last thing we need is another decision. So how many times have you stood in a store and browsed online and you're like, can I afford this? Is this something that's just purely for a dopamine hit, or do I want this? And if you have a clear spending limit, it just becomes, does this fit within my plan? And
Yeah.
then you take the guesswork out of it.
I don't know, this is like not the point of this example, but it kind of is. I always think about like one of the many reasons I really like Aldi and Lidl, not just because the prices are cheaper. I actually like them because they are smaller stores. So if you get used to shopping at Lidl or Aldi and then you walk into a Publix or Kroger, you're like overwhelmed. You're
Yeah.
used to looking at like 2 brands of oatmeal, like a store brand and a name brand. And then you go into Publix and there's like 30 brands of oatmeal, like no joke. And it's overwhelming. And so I love setting limits because it, again, like that is how it reduces decision fatigue. Like it's so much easier to make a decision when there's 2 things than when there's 30 things.
Exactly.
The other thing is setting limits can build really good financial discipline. So think of it as like, a financial workout, right? The more you stick to your limits, the stronger that muscle becomes. So you get a lot of like forward momentum and motivation when you start to set limits and then you see the good things that come from it. And then you build that discipline muscle, right? And it translates to better decisions in other areas of your life. So, you really set some limits around how you're spending your money. And then all of a sudden it's motivating you to do the same things, in the health and wellness space in your life. And so I think there's a lot of like positive knock-on effects and it can build discipline quite nicely.
Yeah, another thing it does is increase awareness. So when you set a limit on a specific category, like dining out or coffees or something, you become mindful of how you're spending. So if you start to notice that $10 latte maybe really isn't worth it, you can make coffee at home and then put that money aside for something else. And not total side note, still on topic. I read a New York Times article the other day that was saying for Gen Z, what they call little treats are worth going over budget. And
I read the same article.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's Gen Z because it's really like, they say it's Gen Z, but I think it's just the period at which Gen Z is in their life.
Yeah.
Because like I can speak for myself and probably other friends who are in our early 20s where you just want like the coffee, you want like the cookie, whatever. The beer at happy hour, you go over your budget because they're all treats because you had a bad day. It's like the retail therapy side. It's just justified in a totally different manner. It's not a treat budget. It's just your retail therapy.
Yeah.
It's your...
No, I feel the same way. And I can relate. Like, I like treats. We all like treats. But I look at my kids and I'm like, man, they want a treat every day,
Same. I was like, it's not a treat if it's every day.
Yeah.
Then it's
they want to
just
go
the
to Starbucks
expectation.
every day. They want to go to Tea Leaf Creamery, which is this other place that actually charges more than Starbucks for things. Yeah, they are in this like, treat culture, right? When I saw that article, I was like, yeah, no, this is like my day-to-day life. But then I also catch myself in the same thing. I'm like, I'm busy, I'm doing something. I'm like, nice iced, shaken espresso from Starbucks sounds good right about now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting one for yourself, it's hard to tell your kids no.
Yeah. Well, I try not to do it in front of them, right?
Yeah, well,
I set
yes.
limits,
Yeah, that's why I wait till they go to bed to have my treats or eat it in a dark closet somewhere.
Yeah, I love it. I picture you just hiding in your closet. Okay, the other cool thing about limits, if we want to make limits fun, which is what we're trying to do here, y'all, is the end result of limits is that it can create a lot of freedom and joy, right? So it might sound counterintuitive because you're setting yourself limits, but if you set good limits, then it feels a lot easier when you all of a sudden want to do something, set some fun money aside and, spend $100 or $200 a month or whatever, works with your budget. Then you can spend that money guilt-free and you feel so much better about doing it because you've got limits in place. And you don't have anxiety and stress about well, should I be spending money on this thing or not? And, you have already made a conscious decision that this money is allocated for fun in this example. And you get to enjoy that purchase so much more and you don't have any financial baggage on it. And so, yeah, I think the idea is you guys get it. Limits can be a good thing. There can be a lot of benefits to it. I think what is most helpful and what we're here to do with you all is let's talk about the action-oriented piece of this and some ideas for how to set and stick to healthy limits.
So let's start with the why. So before you set a single limit, ask yourself why you're doing this. Are you saving for a vacation? Are you paying off credit card debt? Are you trying to get your credit cards out of that escape room so you can spend them?
That's a good why.
Or are you just trying to gain control over your spending? Your why will be your motivation when things get tough.
Yeah, I think about, there's a very strong why for why we're setting limits on our kids' screen time and on our own screen time. Because we know it's arguably not good for us in any quantity, but definitely not good for us in a large quantity. And it can take over our lives and there's all these negative side effects. And we know the same thing about debt, right? Being in debt or not being able to pay your bills or living paycheck to paycheck, right? It doesn't feel good. And so you understanding your why and having some motivation for where you're headed. And I always say this, but your why does not have to be some big, gnarly, crazy goal, right? It might just be, I know I want to be in control of my money and I want to feel good about things. And that's important to me. And that will make me happy, in the short and long term. And that might be your why. Start there. And then I think the next big thing is you got to analyze your spending, right? You couldn't set limits on I keep going back to the screen time example, right? It's hard to set limits on screen time if you don't have a sense of how much time are you currently spending and does that feel good or bad, right? And so to set a realistic limit without knowing where you're at now is tough. And so, you want to do all the things you need to do to kind of create a budget, right? Which it's funny, we probably don't actually talk about this a lot on the podcast, but you need to have a sense of what money is coming in, right? And how much money do you make after all the taxes and 401k and all this other stuff is coming out of your paycheck? And what, can you afford to put more against your 401k and all that? And then after that, with what's left over, how do you want to spend it? Do you have savings goals you're trying to work towards? But to do all of this, you have to have a sense of how you're spending today, which to do that, you probably need to track your spending, which we'll talk about in a moment. But you got to spend the time to look at where your spending is right now to be able to start to set some limits.
Yeah, I would maybe even say, too, at least for me, that looking at my spending right now doesn't always resonate in the same way as my historical spending. So, looking back over the last couple months
Yeah.
with more perspective of oh, yeah, after the fact, that wasn't money well spent, or I wish I hadn't gone over budget on this. And so it kind of gives you a little more time to process, like we've talked about with the dopamine hits that you get from spending, or just the feeling that you get when you spend that money either wears off or the guilt lingers. And so having a little perspective and time away from the transaction or the purchase
Yeah, it's a
can
great
give
point.
you a little more perspective to say you know what? That helps shape my why going forward. So, if you're not tracking your expenses now, start doing it and then start paying attention every week, every few weeks, just to give yourself some time and space to process. And
yeah, I agree. That's a great point. And I think also remind people sometimes you do look back a few months later and you have the moment, the dopamine hit, the moment of whatever where you were like in love with that thing you wanted has passed. And if it's passed and you haven't even like used that thing and you can still return it, like go return it,
Yeah.
like some things can be undone, right? And so I just, off topic of what we're talking about today, but there's nothing wrong with returning that stuff if you still can. Okay, so after you're spending some time analyzing your spending, next you actually want to like do the budgeting, right? And set some limits. And so, I think you want to really focus on setting reasonable limits. So it can be hard to go from, oh my gosh, Greg and I were just reviewing our eating out last month. We spent $1,000, which is high for us. And so it can be hard to go from $1,000 a month in eating out to 0 or to 100, right? That's like a 90% decline. That's a lot. That's aggressive. Look, you can try that, but my advice would be set more reasonable limits, unless you were like in debt and you just can't afford that and you're putting that on a credit card. But if it's just stopping you from saving as much and from, doing other things you want to be doing, I would say, not, start too small, but like create a more reasonable, manageable goal. See how you feel. So you might want to start cutting out your eating out budget by 20% the first month. And if you hit that and that was easy, then push it a little bit the next month. Or you might get to a point where you're like, actually, okay, I'm feeling really good at about $500 a month is my limit in this category, right? I think you have to play around with it and experiment a little bit to figure out where is the right limit for you. And that limit is going to be different for everybody because there's like no magical amount on like what you should be spending to eat out every month or something, right? It is going to be different based on your financial goals, where you're at in your life, the size of your family, the area you live in. There's so many different factors. Okay. How's it going with Monarch, Erica?
It's going great. I mean, I look at it daily, but I am like always over budget because I budget poorly. I need to figure out how to like accurately make my budget, but it's going great. And I feel like that's a segue into using tools to stay accountable.
Yeah. Like tools like Monarch can be very helpful. You could do all this stuff we're talking about manually, but it is harder.
Yeah, and we're not sponsored by Monarch, but we do love Monarch. And two of the co-hosts, does Greg have to give back his hoodie since he's not on the podcast anymore? But, keep working on the rest of us.
Yeah.
We do love Monarch. Honestly, it's like such an amazing tool. Everything's in one place. And it's such a good way to keep accountability for your spending.
Look, and if Monarch's not the app for you, like my advice is just use a budgeting app, right? Because it can really help you to track your spending. If you're the type of person that's going to manually, like, I don't know, write your stuff down in a notebook or put your stuff manually in a Google Sheet, I know people who have done that. If you're disciplined enough to do it that way, but I've got too many like moving parts financially in my life every day. And I really like having all my accounts and all my credit cards hooked up to Monarch. They flow in. I've got different rules set up. I can easily categorize them. I can do it on the fly. I can do it when I'm like, have 5 minutes while I'm standing in line somewhere and I just need to kill some time. I can just like categorize some expenses. I mean, that's my idea of a good time. People like to scroll when they're standing in line. I like to categorize my expenses.
Okay, nerd.
I know you do too, Erica.
No, I.
What do you do if you got like 5 minutes standing in line? What's your like go-to?
Probably New York Times Games app, or
that's
been
solid.
reading The Guardian.
I respect that.
Yeah,
I would actually
thank
rather
you.
do that than track expenses, if I'm being
Yeah,
honest.
I'm not in it as much as you guys are, but this is a good challenge for me to kind of get comfortable with it for my limits. Like I take my own advice of, looking back at historical charges and trying to set a better budget that way. But one thing that I think is a really good tool, and it's probably outdated, but I think makes a lot of sense, is just cash envelopes.
People still do it.
I think it makes total sense, and I should probably do it for myself. I'm maybe curious to like set an experiment for myself. And what would my spending be if I were to do cash versus a credit card? Because I'm a lot more apt to just,
You don't really feel it when you just like tap a card or do.
Yeah, or your phone. I feel like that's the dangerous part
I
when you have
agree,
your card
yeah.
on your phone.
And there is something about the like tactile method of like holding cash and like, I mean, there's a lot of places that like wouldn't even
That
take cash.
dirty cash.
Holding
I know,
that
that's
dirty,
crazy.
dirty cash. You're right.
That would be a fun challenge. Like just take out a certain amount of cash.
Yeah.
And only spend it. And if I go somewhere where it doesn't take cash, like, well, I got to go somewhere else.
There's also like a whole, I was going to say like subculture, but not really. But there's a whole category on like Etsy of people who sell like really cute binders that have like clear envelopes that you put your money in. And they have like really pretty labels for your categories. And it's a very, there's a lot of people who really like the like, you know, paper, tactile, physical process of, you know, holding their money that way. And I just always thought it was cool that there's like so many people on Etsy that make like little labels for the envelopes and like make you really, they just make it like a beautiful setup, you know? I don't think you should spend too much money to get your budgeting set up in place, but Monarch costs money, right? It's about $100 a year. And I think it's well worth the money. And if you'd rather invest your money in like a cute little setup from Etsy of like pretty labeled cash envelopes, like go for it, you know? I think it's a good use of funds if you're going to stick to that thing.
I'll just stick to a brown sandwich bag, like
You could also
a
do that.
mafia movie.
Like
yeah.
you're a bank robber or something, you know? You can have like a 40 ounce in that bag and your cash. So when you
You
reach
know
the
me
end of
so
your
well.
budget, you just drink the beer that's in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Another tool is a person, right? It's an accountability buddy, which by the way, someone wrote in when I think on an episode with Liz, I like joked that we made up that term. I didn't really think we made up that term, by the way. But someone messaged me and was like, apparently that term is from South Park. Like they coined it first. That's what the internet says. At
Oh,
least.
that's
Yeah.
funny. Okay.
And I was like, well, I'm in good company. But like having a limits buddy, right? A friend or partner who is helping you with your finances. I mean, Liz was like actually asked me like 5 or 6 times, like, have you done your July finance review with Greg? You said you wanted to do it and I was supposed to check in with you about it. And it helped like knowing. And then I finally like did it. Actually, we did it yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. And I told Liz, I was like, we did it. And you can, so you can have a buddy that you're going to like check in with each other, celebrate your wins, offer support. I think in addition to the actual like budgeting tools, the tool of having an accountability partner can be incredibly helpful.
Mm-hmm. A limits buddy.
Yeah, a limits buddy. Accountability buddy, limits buddy, whatever you want to call them.
So I guess the last actionable item here that really is the main thing is reflect and adjust. Your financial life is always changing. You can take time each month to review your limits and just assess whether they worked for you. I mean, it's easy to say whether you were too strict. Like if you went from eating out every night to not at all, like, yeah, maybe scale that back. Maybe like we like nuance here. We like moderation.
Yeah, work your way there.
Yeah, work your way there. If you're too loose, do the same thing and adjust as needed because this process isn't about perfection. It's about progress. And like each time you do it, it starts to feel a little less overwhelming, which is the whole point of this is like we're so overwhelmed by so much that limits can be there to help limit the overwhelm, as counterintuitive as that sounded.
Well, and they're your limits, which is part of the point here, right? You can adjust them, right? You're putting them in place. You can decide they don't feel right, they feel good, they feel too restrictive, they don't feel restrictive enough. You're working towards your goals, you're not working towards your goals, right? So you can adjust them whenever you want, as you should. And this is a learning process. It's a journey, an evolution. It's not a like overnight thing. And I know you just said this, Erica, but I think it's worth restating. Like, this is about progress, not perfection. And I hope discussions like this, I mean, it's literally why we do the podcast, but I hope discussions like this are helpful to encourage you to think about where you want to set limits in your life. And look, if you're listening to this financial podcast, you might be great in the financial space, right? You might already do a great job of setting limits and you don't feel like that's what you want to work on. But I would bet if that's the case, there are other areas of your life where setting limits might help you. And so I would challenge you to think if like this doesn't apply to you financially, which is kind of what we're focused on, hence the name of the podcast, Inside Out Money. Think about where limits would help you in other categories of your life and let that be your takeaway from this discussion. Erica, where do you need to set some limits? Like, is it with me?
Yeah, you're my limit. Good question.
What do you think's the biggest category in your life where you need to set, where you would benefit from setting limits?
Probably our restaurant budget.
Oh,
I think we get a little too.
I didn't even mean financially. Do you think I meant just across your whole life? Like,
probably in taking on too much
yeah,
in my life, just trying to create limits around having
yeah,
space to say yes to things instead of obligatory yeses.
yeah. And I think often we use the term like boundaries when we think about, you know, our time and stuff too.
Yeah.
But it's the same concept, right? Of you setting limits with your money or setting limits with your commitments. Like, I think, Erica, you and I are similar in the sense of like we want to be helpful and we want to do a lot of things and we're interested in a lot of things. And, you know, like we both probably lean towards saying yes to too many things. And then we get really frustrated and resentful when we're overwhelmed by all the things we've committed to. And yeah, it's like, I know we were talking offline about like, volunteering at our kids' schools and different stuff like this. And it's like, sometimes you could actually be doing, there's plenty of people that aren't doing enough of that, but there's also a lot of people that are doing too much of that. And, it's not a bad thing
Yeah.
to say no to something sometimes. And in the opposite of it's not a bad thing is it's a good thing to say no to things sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. I feel like you and I actually talk about limits. Like, what was there something in Atlanta when you were in Atlanta last where we were like, you were trying to make different plans. And at some point you were like, I just can't do this. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right. You were telling your sister the same thing. You were trying to like give her permission to set a limit.
Yeah. It's limits, boundaries, all these, synonyms for this word. They're all designed to really be tools, yet they have negative connotations, and be helpful tools.
Yeah.
We just have to flip our mindset so that we don't see them as hindrances, but the opposite of a hindrance.
Yeah. What's the opposite of a hindrance?
Which is...
Look at us both typing. When I typed in, it said opposite. Progress.
I know, that's what it said for me too. Progress.
Godsend. Blessing.
Yes.
A benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, progress.
Okay, so a benefit. Yeah, okay, yes.
Yeah, any of those. Benefit, progress.
The opposite of hindrance is, benefit, progress. Yeah, these things are here to benefit. We can benefit from these limits. They are not here as hindrances. Wow. Okay, that was a really complicated
I like
statement.
how we've both busted out the thesaurus right away for that.
I know. And opposite of hindrances, or no, similar and opposite words. Opposite.
And the opposite of hinder.
Opposite.
The opposite of hinder is to facilitate. I like that word too, because putting limits on things facilitates other things in our life and makes room for other things in our life. Okay. On that note, we sort of set a limit, a loose one, that we were like, well, let's make this a shorter episode today. And I think we've done that. So pat on the back for us, because we like to talk to each other so much. We don't always do that. On that note, I would love feedback from people. I'm just curious for people's feedback on whether you like the hour-long episodes or whether you like the 30, 40-minute mark better. So if you ever want to share that feedback with us, you can do that. You can always leave us a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370 or hit us up on Instagram and let us know what episode lengths you prefer. And yeah, we appreciate you guys listening. We know your time is limited, right? You've got limits on your time. We all only have 24 hours in a day. We always appreciate you spending some of it with us. When we're talking about setting limits, I am not talking about setting limits on how many Inside Out Money episodes you listen to, right? You should listen to all of them. And if you've enjoyed this episode, that was a joke, by the way. If you've enjoyed today's episode, you could leave us a written review on Apple Podcasts, because there is no limit to the amount. Well, actually, one person, you can only leave one review per person, so there is a limit on that. But there's no limit on the amount of reviews we're allowed to receive and on how happy it makes us. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Maggie. This was a good conversation. Sorry it was so limited in length.
It's okay. It's good for us to limit ourselves sometimes. So thanks, Erica.
Thanks, Maggie. Bye.
Bye.